Hello everybody and welcome to a new video. I am here to start another week of reading for a team for my readathon, Gamenightathon. In case you don't know, Gamenightathon is a game board based readathon that I run like once every 6 months. The July edition is always based on a board game, and the December edition is based on the lottery. So this time around we're playing a game of Labyrinth, and as I'm the host, I am going to be reading for separate teams every single week. Basically more or less sabotaging them, I've realized in the meantime, because the score that counts is a team score and it's the average score per person. So since I am only reading for each team for 1 week, my page count is most likely always going to be the lowest page count for that team, and so I'm basically just lowering the page count for people. But you know, all teams will have this sabotage, so the ones for which I read more will still have a benefit compared to the ones for which my week has been not quite as productive. So my apologies for that if that turned out to be your team. But this week we are reading for Team Triangle. So I am currently still in the middle of one book. I am listening to Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. I'm exactly 31% in, so those 31% are counting for the first team, so Team Circle, and the remaining percentage will count for Team Triangle if I finish it this week. Otherwise I will have to do the calculation of how much percentage I read during this week, and in any case whatever percentage I read in that book this week will count towards Team Triangle. I do hope to finish it throughout this week. I do expect to finish it throughout this week because this is basically the book that I listen to on the commute and the book that I listen to while I'm cooking. So it is a book that I'm progressing in quite quickly. As I said, I am about 31% in, and I think I started it like 2-3 days ago or something like that. So you know, like I haven't listened so much time to it, and I'm already 31% in. So I do expect for me to finish this one throughout this week, and then the other one we'll just have to figure out. So I'm here with the prompt cards. These are the original game prompt cards, so whatever icon I'll show you now, I do have to look at my Canva list to see which icon on my Gamenightathon board they would correspond with. But so I've shuffled the thing a little bit, and then let's choose a card. So the card is upside down because it's the keys card. And so let me actually go and check what that means, what I will have to be reading for. Alright, we got the paw print. So paw print, like in its most easiest interpretation, would just be like an animal on the cover, or of course an animal in the story. And so I definitely have like a ton of books for that on the one to read in general. I just don't know whether I have anything like on the TBR, you know, like the physical TBR that really works for that. And then, I mean, I think I do. I need to check the cover of the Veiled Throne to see if that, for example, could count for that, because there are like animal type machines on the cover a lot of the times. So potentially, because I do need to read the Veiled Throne. But there are other things that I'm probably more excited about and potentially using this for. But I also do want to still read a few things on my TBR. There are a few things that I need to read the first book of in order to continue into the second. But I just don't remember whether they had any sort of animal presence in them to warrant that. I also think that paw print you could think of loyalty or companionship with that, and then it might work a little bit better for some of those books as well. So I just have to have a little bit more of a think before I decide on like what exactly I'm gonna use for this. But so right now what the plan is I'm gonna be cooking. I'm gonna change my clothes because I'm in my jeans and temperatures have risen again and I am dying basically. So I'm gonna change into some shorts get cooking while listening to Her Majesty's Royal Coven a little bit further. And I'll check in with you guys about that a little bit later, because I do already want to share like my current thoughts about that book with you guys here, because I didn't do that at the end of the previous vlog. So I might as well start with those thoughts here, because most likely I'm going to be finishing that book within this vlog, so I'll be sharing my thoughts about it here. Hello guys, it is Saturday afternoon, well Saturday evening actually. I have returned from Brussels, where I was spending the day with some friends, and when in Brussels and when with friends who are book lovers like me, then you have to go to the Waterstones, of course. So I did buy some books. So I think earlier this week I shared on my Discord that my TBR was back down to 10 books, and that is definitely not the case anymore. But so let's first talk about what I've so far been reading. So as indicated, I have been listening to the second book in the Her Majesty's Royal Coven book series, which is called The Shadow Cabinet. I am about halfway through that one right now. It is a weekend, so I'll probably not make much progress in it anymore. Though you know, when I'm cooking, I do listen to it. I don't feel like cooking tonight, so probably will be for tomorrow night to continue in it. But I'm really enjoying that one, though. There are also some sort of like directions in which the story is going that I'm not liking, just because I know that I'll be hurt by them. Because yeah, there are some things just being set up in the beginning. I cannot really talk much about it because this is a sequel, of course, but I absolutely loved the first one. And the second one, yeah, I mean, it's a wild ride so far, because there's something that kind of happens at the end of book one that I was expecting to be, to some extent, a little bit of a cop-out, but we're continuing on with it. And we're following through, it seems like, and I'm like, wait, what? But so yeah, a lot of stuff is starting to kind of go wrong here, and it'll be interesting to see how we resolve all of those things, and you know, the implications and the downfall for certain characters, I guess. But so yeah, of course, now the sun came back and now I'm slightly overexposed, but I think it's still relatively fine. And then I indicated to you guys that I had done another roll, and the prompt that I got for that one was the paw print. So I did have to have a little bit of a think of what I wanted to do with that particular prompt, you know, because of course automatically it makes me think of something like dogs or cats. And then I asked like ChatGPT, and it was also like, you know, companionship, loyalty. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe I can use this for something like the third book in the Dandelion Dynasty, because I do really preferably want to read it this month so that I can still finish the entire series before the end of August as originally planned. But I'm also not really in the mood to pick up that book right now, so in the end I decided, you know, if I'm thinking of cats and dogs, then I'm thinking of pets, so might as well read Pets by Kweki Emezi. So that's what I'm doing right now. This is a relatively short book, it's like 207 pages or something like that, and as a consequence I cannot tell you too much about it. I went into it without knowing really anything about it, but so it's a story about a black teenager who is living in this world where there used to be monsters, but right now the angels have full control over the city, and like no monsters are around anymore. However, when a painting that her mother paints starts to come to life and say that there is a monster hiding in her best friend's house, she has to rethink what she knows, or what everybody has been telling about the way that the world works. So yeah, I'm about 75% into that at this point in time, and I'm really enjoying that one a whole lot. I've highlighted a few scenes already, or like a few phrases here and there, and I'm just really enjoying the style of that for the time being. And I'm also enjoying the fact that it's, you know, like a fast, quick read, because it's just like, you know, the pacing for it is really well done. I'm just flying through it, and I'll finish that one tonight, I'm sure. So that will give me another role to do to figure out what else I'm going to be reading for Team Triangle. But so, when it comes to the books that I have purchased, let me see, because they are lying behind me. First up, we have Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. So this is the first book in a series, which is going to, I think, count 4 books. I don't know much about this. Cozy fantasy, involving night swords and all of those types of things. I don't need to know much more. I have read T. Kingfisher. I haven't read a whole ton of her, but I have read her before and I really enjoyed her writing style. And this is definitely one that I wanted to give a go. And so I quite on impulse chose this one. I think the majority of my other books are books that I've been much more sort of like much more prominent in my wish list, much more sort of like, ooh, I want to get to that one, or like it's probably one of the next books I'm going to pick up. This book was not on that list. It was just like, it was there. I've been meaning to pick it up, and I embraced that moment now. Next up we have one that is The Eights by Joanne Miller. This is a book about the first women who went to university at Oxford. So it is a historical novel that's going to look at patriarchy, at women breaking through the patriarchy, at the difficulty and the misogynies that they had to combat and overcome during their time at Oxford. And I really enjoy that. I think it's also sort of like interbellum period, which is a period in time that I find really interesting and very much overlooked, as in like we don't really see much media take place within that period of time, but I think it's a very interesting period of time because you have like the guys returning from war, women have had certain opportunities that I've never really had before in their lives in history, and you know, the clash between those two, between the guys wanting things to just revert back to the way they had been, and women kind of being like, you know what, there are certain things we've acquired over the past few years that we don't necessarily want to see taken away again. And then the final two is Green Dot by Madeline Gray. This is a cover buy. I have this book on my radar for a while already. I've wanted this book for a while already. I did have to reread the sort of like explanation of what it is when I was in store, and that still doesn't really tell me anything except sort of like somebody in their 20s and office life and stuff like that. But yes, so we can definitely say that this is a cover buy. It's not a story that's necessarily intriguing me. It's not that I read the back of that and I'm like, yeah, I don't care about this at all, but it's not like I read the back of it and I'm like, oh, I wonder what is going to happen there. No, this is mainly a cover buy, but you know, covers can give off vibes, and I'm hoping that this vibe is what I'm going to be reading here. And then finally, from the Booker International long list, we have Hunchback by Sayu Ichikawa, which is translated from the Japanese by Polly Barton. This is a disability book, which is the main reason why I am buying this one. This is the one off of the long list that probably most interested me because of its link to my personal life. So as we read in the beginning, it says, born with a congenital muscle disorder, Shakaisawa has severe spine curvature and uses an electric wheelchair and ventilator. Obviously, that isn't fully applicable to me, but I do have a muscle disorder and a spine curvature. So I love translated literature. I love the weirdness that sometimes comes from that. I love just like exploring different perspectives. But for this one, the main reason for picking it up is the fact that it might be close to home. It might be a perspective that I can very much relate to. So yeah. Those are the books that I picked up. I'm hoping to pick them up sooner rather than later when it comes to actually reading them. And you know, hopefully I actually get like the wheelchair prompt for Gamenightathon, because then I can immediately pick up Hunchback and you know, like just immediately devour that one. It is a short book, so you know, I'm kind of looking forward to just picking it up right away now that I'm like just so eager to get to it. But yeah, we'll see what the board has in store for me this month. All right, we have an issue, and the issue is that I should have just done the prompt sooner, because with me having more or less, like I think I even just did the prompt when I finished Pets. So or right before, right? I think I updated you guys before finishing Pets, but so I did my prompt very late, and now I need a new book. And because I was doubting what to read, I made a poll for it, and I made that poll for 24 hours, and now I have to wait until late this evening before I actually know what you guys are voting for. And in the meantime, I have kind of just figured out what the book is that I should be reading for this prompt. So fingers crossed that you guys end up choosing a book that definitely fits the prompt, because this book definitely does. And let me up the ISO a little bit because it is a little bit too dark. So, and zoom in a little bit maybe as well. Alright. So, I got the telescope. So, like, you will have seen that it showed a map, but so the map corresponds to the telescope in my list of which prompts correspond to which of the Gamenigtathon icons. So the telescope is what I ended up with. So telescope automatically makes me think of it needs to be a sci-fi book, or of course it needs to be a book about like scientists, or like specifically speaking then about astrologists. But so yeah, I was kind of thinking like, okay, it needs to be sci-fi. So the first book that my mind immediately went to was Orbital by Samantha Harvey, just because we'd discussed it when we were in Brussels in the Waterstones. And so yeah, I was like immediately, I'm gonna have to read Orbital, right? And originally I was like happy about that as well, but I was also like, yeah, I do want to reduce the TBR a little bit. I have just added 4 books to my TBR. I would love to reduce it by reading a book that is actually on my TBR, but I don't have any sci-fi on the TBR at the moment, at this point in time. Then I was thinking like, okay, I have just bought this book about 4 women going to college. What if one of them is studying something that is science related? Then I could definitely see this fitting in. And then my mind realized like, but I also have Saga Volume 11, I think it is, on the TBR still, which is a sci-fi. So, which isn't ideal in the sense that I'm still super debating when it comes to Saga whether I'm going to reread the entirety of Saga before reading Volume 11, or whether I'm just going to go into Volume 11 assuming that my brain will just be refreshed on the series when I go through it. So I was in purgatory about this, couldn't decide what do I want, and that's why I made that poll. And now my mind has been like, oh, but I actually have a book that has star in the title. It's not on the TBR, which is probably why I didn't think of it, but it is the first book in a series, and the second book is on the TBR. And the intention for me was to read the first book in the series and the first book in another series as well in July, so that in August I could read these 2 sequels, and that is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. So I want to read this book now. The moment that I realized like, oh yeah, this is a perfect fit for this prompt, I was like, damn it. And up until that point in the poll, a book that definitely fits the prompt was still winning, and I was like, just to some extent by that time I was less excited for it to be Orbital. You know, I was more thinking along the lines of like, yeah, if it lands on a book that definitely fits, it is gonna be a sci-fi, and I can still change it to, for example, Murderbot, or still decide to do Saga, even though I had slotted Saga mentally into the next book in the series. But now it's a tie between next book in the series and a book that definitely fits the prompt, and Saga would fit both of those. And this would be a stretch, I guess, because it isn't the next book in a series, but rereading this would give me the possibility to read a book that is the next book in a series. But I think that is stretching your poll results, and so now I'm just in purgatory, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna start reading this and then, you know, it turns out that you guys' poll results are gonna make me read Saga after all, then, you know, will I be able to fit this into another prompt? And this reading time that I might be doing in it today will then, you know, like, not count towards Team Triangle, even though I'm reading for Team Triangle this week. So part of me is thinking that it is probably just the safest to read Saga right now, because even if it now lands on a book that definitely fits the prompt, Saga will still count for that choice. So I guess I'll do it. I'll do that. It's not that long, so it also won't, it won't take too much reading time. But it's just the fact that I know, I could have fit this in now. I've been looking for a way to fit this book into this month, and I had the perfect opportunity just now. So yeah, let's hope for another opportunity later this month. Good morning. It is Wednesday morning, the 16th of July, meaning it is just beyond the midway point of the month, and this is going to be the final day that I'm reading for Team Triangle. So far I think I've logged some 250 points or something like that. So we do have to kind of get a move on and get a little bit more into, make sure that I give them a decent push in, well, I mean, I'm pulling them back in principle as I indicated last week, but yeah, I want to make sure that I give them a decent push, that at least my score this week is close as possible to the 660 or so that I contributed to Team Circle last week. So here we go. So I do have to update you guys because I did finish a book in the meantime. So on Sunday, when I was having a whole debate about what I was going to do, because I was battling between what I most wanted to do and what the poll was telling me to do, I did end up deciding to follow the poll. So I followed you guys' choice. So I read a sci-fi book that was the next in the series by continuing with Saga. So I ended up deciding that, Saga is such a small book that it would give me a boost to my TBR. It would be a quick and easy thing to read, and therefore it would also give me a boost to my reading productivity or my sense of reading productivity. It was an easy win, would make me feel like, ooh, yeah, my reading is on a roll, and it definitely had that effect. So Saga is a sci-fi series in which we are basically following a sort of Romeo and Juliet story between two civilizations who are at war with one another, and then a couple at the center of this who crosses those boundaries and is therefore hunted afterwards. And so, yeah, a lot has happened. We are much further into the story, so I of course cannot go into much. I do enjoy these books. I will say that I'm starting to kind of fall off of it just because of the fact that, it takes so long for these books to be published that, the sense of sort of connection to the characters is kind of getting lost. And so, and at the beginning I was kind of struggling a little bit with these different characters and remember who exactly they are and the dynamics that have come there. But that is also on me for not having reread the entire saga this time around. But so yeah, I wouldn't necessarily mind it at some point rounding off, and I don't know whether that just means that comic books aren't for me or this type of comic book in any case. When I was young I used to read a lot of comic books, but they were always sort of standalone adventures, whereas this is always continuing on from what has come before. And because of how much time always passes and how short these are, that's just a dynamic that I don't think I'm a total fan of. But so that was the book that I read for the telescope prompts, and then I basically, when I was debating about what to do, I also drew the next prompt to kind of know, okay, what am I going to get next, and can I fit in something that I'm super excited for that prompt instead. And then I got the birthday cake, which I decided to interpret as a gift to myself. It's your birthday, you can do what you want to, and so I decided to pick up my newest purchase, which is The Eights by Joanna Miller. This is a book that is set in the interbellum period, looking at the first women who are allowed to officially matriculate to Oxford University. So apparently in the history of Oxford University, women had already been allowed to attend classes with chaperones, but they hadn't been allowed yet to actually get a degree from Oxford. And so at this point in time, so we're 1920, the first women are allowed to basically enter Oxford knowing that they will walk out with a degree. And just for transparency's sake, I guess, or just to tell the whole story there, the women who had taken classes before and who had earned the rights to the degree without getting the actual degree also do get their degree at that point in time in history as well. But so we are following the first women who enter into university knowing that they will walk away with a degree, and the struggles that they face. It's not as much of a struggle with sort of the misogyny of their fellow fellow male students as I expected it to be in the beginning. But there is, of course, definitely misogyny to take care of, especially when it comes to the rules. These are the first women allowed into university, and unlike the men who basically have no rules and for whom college life is just like a wild ride, they have to adhere to strict moral, ethical, whatever codes in order to be sort of like paragons of their gender, in order to not potentially put a spanner in the works of this acquired right. Because if they were to misbehave, there is such a big chance that the people running Oxfords would kind of feel like, you know, women don't belong here. Even though they would be doing exactly what their male peers are doing, women are, of course, held to different standards, especially at that point in time. And so a woman crossing certain boundaries of what men think of as being a respectable woman would not go down well. So they have like these super strict rules to adhere to when it comes to the company they keep, the attire they wear, the hours they keep. And so that is definitely some of the struggle we're looking at here. But we're looking at 4 women with different backgrounds, both socially and economically, and as well as in terms of, you know, the emotional backstory that they have, and the friendships that grow between them. And yeah, I'm eager to continue on with it. I'm about 40% into it at this point in time. It is a little bit slower than I expected it to be. I was kind of expected to be so engrossed in it that I would just fly through it, and it's not that, but that doesn't really necessarily take away from the experience. It's just I'm getting to enjoy it at a slower pace because I'm not sucked in the way that I was expecting to. So, but that might mean that it might not end up being the 5-star that I was hoping that it was going to be. But so yeah, that's what I'm currently reading physically, but I do also have one audiobook. As indicated at the beginning of this vlog, I am in the middle of The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. I'm currently 86% into that one, so I do expect that that one will be finished before moving on to the next team. That is my mission for today, is to finish that one. I will probably get through, get to somewhere within the 90% based off of my bicycle ride to work this morning and this afternoon, and then I'll have to listen probably a little bit to it as well here in the evening to round it off. But so yeah, that has been a frustrating ride at this moment, because I guess like the first book has to do a lot with you know, like transphobia. And while that also had a lot of frustration in it, because that is not personally touching upon me, I guess, the frustration was experienced in a different way. The second book has a lot of misogyny against women in it, and of course, being a woman, that frustration just reaches a whole other level, you know. But yeah, so I've been frustrated a lot of times with some of the things here. I've been frustrated as well to some extent with the fact that, you know, like almost all men in this book, you know, are just like, we don't only get one male perspective. And so the males that we don't get perspectives from, they aren't shown in a positive light, let me say it like that. And so to some extent, I feel like that is kind of like, you know, there's a clear message and a clear intent here in terms of the portrayal of male violence against women, and I would like to see that balanced out a little bit more, perhaps with some more male perspectives to strive for the type of male gaze that is good, that is you know, respectful towards women and such. But that's like my biggest qualm, and I mean, I understand that there's not enough space within the book to do that. But yeah, that is sometimes sort of like, it's like my observation is that it's like painting a very grim picture of men within this book, and that there are definitely enough men as well out there who are not like that. And so that this, statistically speaking, is very skewed in that perspective. But yes, this is a frustrating read when it comes to those storylines. But I am still very much enjoying it. I'm just, as was the case with the 8s, I'm not as engrossed as I have been with the first book in this case. The first book, I feel like I was always looking for moments to pick it up because I always wanted to continue on with it. I know what was going to happen. With this one, I am more than okay to wait until the next morning when I will take the bicycle again and be able to continue on with it. So it is a little bit less in my enjoyment than the first one was, but I am still enjoying it a ton, and I'm hoping that we're going to have a good resolvement to this whole story, but I'm fearing that this is going to end with everything has gone to shits and we'll have to try and sort it out in the third book. But the good news there is that the third book is coming out this month, so if need be, I can dive into the third book more or less straight away, I guess. But so yeah. I'm going off to work now, and tonight I have a ton of reading to do to try and get Team Triangle as many points as possible before my deadline tonight. Well, I'm fully in the dark now. So yeah, I have finished the Shadow Cabinets, so the second book in Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. This book had so many anger triggers for me, so I was very invested, very frustrated, aggravated, annoyed, but I had to just keep on going and keep on reading to figure out, you know, like what was going to happen next, how were we going to resolve these things, whether the things I feared were going to happen were going to happen. And I will say that like my worst fears about one storyline didn't end up being the case, and I'm very happy with that at least. But yeah, I thought this book was very well, really enjoyed it a whole ton. I feel like I was just a little bit less invested as I was in the first book, just because the character that I really got along with in the first book was no longer in the second book, and so that kind of dragged my like, not interest, but my investment into the story down a teensy tiny bit, but it's still like between a 4.5 and a 4.75, somewhere around that ballpark, because I really enjoyed it a lot. As I indicated, it has a lot of anger triggers for me, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because they're intentionally, like, you're supposed to be angry about what is happening there. You're not supposed to be like, it's not anger for an author, like, you know, putting problematic stuff in. It is anger because the author is representing stuff that happens in real world life and representing viewpoints that people have that really anger me. So yeah, what I enjoy here as well is, which also happened with the first book, is sort of like the how to phrase that, the play on prophecy, where, you know, you hear a prophecy and then it is unclear the further along you get into the story if this prophecy would have been fulfilled if not for the fact that people had heard the prophecy. So that's sort of like ambiguity around prophecy, and, you know, prophecy not just being a straightforward sort of like this is going to happen and people trying to thwart it, but having prophecy become the result of people having heard the prophecy, and so therefore starting to question whether things would have turned out completely different if people hadn't acted upon hearing of the prophecy. So I always like that sort of like element to prophecy. Those are the most interesting types of interpretation of prophecy, rather than stories in which you just look straightforward at like, yeah, this person is prophesied to do this or that, and, you know, we just roll with that, and it's just a straightforward sort of like deal where you can actually break the prophecy. For example, I always find it more interesting when prophecies are sort of bound to come true and you can ask yourself these questions. And so that has been the case for both the first book and the second book. Here it was also just like so heartbreaking to see this mother get a prophecy about her children and to see how that completely affected the way that she treated her children, the way that she raised them. Her fear for this prophecy coming true completely overrules her motherly instincts and made her treats her kids in such a way that, you know, she couldn't take the distance anymore to see that what she was doing was actually doing more harm than good. And so while she was acting out of a sort of like sense of motherly love, of wanting to protect her child and wanting to prevent her child from going down a prophesied path, the way that she ended up cracking down on the minus things, and the way that she ended up treating a rather young child probably steered this kid a little bit more along the path that she was trying to avoid. But so yeah, I enjoyed this one a whole lot. I am already thinking like, okay, how can I read book 3, because book 3 is coming out tomorrow. And I am unsure whether you have to read the novella that is kind of like the prequel to the entire series, which came out between books 2 and 3. And so I'm unsure whether I need to read that one to go into book 3, because with what is happening in book 3, I kind of want to like immediately dive into book 3, but also I need an icon to dive into it. So I've basically already done my drawn my next 2 prompts, so I know what I need to be reading for the next 2 prompts, and it is not that book, but I do still need an audiobook because for my commuter work I am now audiobook free, so I guess I will have to pull a 3rd card as well to kind of know what my next 3 books are, but that is going to be for the next vlog. I'm not going to talk about that here. But so yeah, for the rest of the evening, all that remains for me is to kind of try and get a little bit further in The Eights by Joanna Miller, but I do have to say that I haven't really gotten much further into tonight so far because, you know, yesterday I watched a reaction video of somebody to the movie Hidden Figures, and then today one of the reaction channels that I watch quite a fair bit actually posted a reaction to Hidden Figures, and so I was like, oh, what a coincidence. So I watched that, and then I regularly watch another reaction channel, their reactions to Buffy and to Gilmore Girls, and so the Gilmore Girls episode dropped today as well, and then another reaction channel that I watched Buffy for reacted to the season final of season 5, so obviously I had to watch that as well. So I've been basically watching a lot of YouTube tonight rather than actually doing a lot of reading. I have gotten quite a fair bit more points for the team triangle at this point in time, and I do think that I'm more or less at the same level now in terms of points that I will be contributing to them as I contributed to Team Circle. I am still going to try to read a little bit more, but it probably won't be too much more because it is already after, like it's almost 10 o'clock, and so between 10 and 11 I'll still do a little bit of reading, but I won't go over 11 neither. So yeah, I'll just tomorrow, I hope, give a final update on like the points that I contributed to the total tally for Team Circle, and then we can call it a wraps on Team Triangle and then we can call it a wraps on this week and on this team. And I'll actually just realized do my spin as well to figure out for me who I will be reading for starting tomorrow. But so yeah, checking with you guys one final time right now. Hello everybody, I feel like I am looking very, very white in the shot right now, but okay. So I am rounding up this vlog today. I am unexpectedly at home during the workday because of quite a big headache that I went to sleep with last night and was still with me this morning, and I feel like, you know, all the shoulder muscles, neck muscle, back muscle are all tense, so it's all coming from there, I guess. So hopefully my physical therapist can solve it in the evening. But so I am going to be rounding off this vlog here. I did get a little bit further into the 8s, but not really all that much. Like last night I tried to still read a little bit in it. I am some 150 pages into this. This is 360 more or less. So I do still have some 200 pages to go in that one. But overall, for Team Triangle, I read about, like I contributed about 700 points to the total tally, and so I went up a little bit compared to the amount of points that I contributed to Team Circle. And yeah, we'll see. I have now, I think I indicated in an earlier clip, I have done a few more like prompts selections, so I kind of already know what is coming next for you guys next week, what I will be reading, what you guys will be watching next week. But so I'll talk about that in next week's vlog, when I will also be reading for a new team. But so yeah, I hope you guys had an awesome second week of Gamenigtathon. By the time that you guys are seeing this, it will have been the third week, it will have already passed by, and so we're coming down to the wire, to the final stretch of this readathon. I'm hoping you guys are all enjoying your time with the readathon. Definitely know what you are reading, what the best book is that you've read so far for Gamenightathon, and wishing you guys a great last week of the readathon. But so yeah, with that, I still have half of the month to go, and so I'm very much looking forward to diving into the next week and the next reading vlog, and see you guys for the next one. Bye!